Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So, Mandy was sitting at her desk. It was a slow day at the unemployment agency. And it was hot, so the fans were on, the front door was open. And this little dog just came trotting in, and trotted right into the room, and hopped up onto the chair across from her desk and sat there. And she said, "Well, little fella, what are you here for?" And he said, "Well, it's an unemployment agency, and I just got laid off, so I'm looking for a new job." And she said, "Oh my goodness, you're a talking dog. Like, yeah, I bet you could get a really good job at a circus." And the dog said, "So the circus needs to hire a new accountant?" I never told that one before, but it popped into my head this morning, and I thought, like, yeah, I think I can see it. I think I finally get it. Good. Welcome to this place, which we make holy by our presence. These doors are open to all. Bring your brokenness and your personal glow, your fatigue and your energy, your loves and hopes and fears. For here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where the ordinary is celebrated, where the human is sanctified, and where compassion is strength. Welcome to this place. Together we make it a holy place. Please join me for the words of the chalice lighting, which are printed inside of your leaflet. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. And now please stand if you're able for hymn 361 and to rejoice and come in.
And to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. And to rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. And to rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. And to rejoice and come in.
Our responsive reading is going to be number 490. Number 490 in the back of the hymnal. I'll read the parts in standard font. Please join me for the sections in italics. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and deep trees, the mountains and rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And now,
presentation. The board, we've discussed, and we did it once. Betsy came up first to talk about why she joined our church, and the board members were going to share why they attended, why they started this church. I said I would go next, and I'm not as prepared as I thought I'd be. And so I was thinking today, why did I choose to come here? I want to say I'm new. I always tell people I'm new. I've been at this church almost 20 years, and I tell people I'm new in Niagara Falls, and I've been here almost 20 years. I've always loved church when I was little. I remember going to Sunday school. I would go to the local, we lived in a tiny town. I went to the local Brethren church. I would walk to Sunday school by myself without my parents, my siblings. I wanted to go to Sunday school. And I used to get little stickers for memorizing verses in my Bible. And I just loved church. As I got older, I became less religious. And so I stopped attending church, and I lived overseas for a little while, and when I was coming back, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I took a quiz online. I think it was belief.net. I don't know if it's still around. This was around like 20-something years ago, and I did this quiz, and it said I was a Unitarian Universalist. I'm like, what's that? So when I was moving to Niagara Falls, I seen one here, and I think we stopped in maybe a few months after we lived here, and it was very churchy, kind of scared me. Sitting back, I was like, I don't know, somebody at the pulpit, a minister talking. But I kept getting the power line, the newsletters. I'm like, this sounds interesting. It sounds interesting. I think I might have come during the summertime. I think it might have been Peter talking about butterflies or the gardening. And it was very interesting. The summer session was very interesting. And I can't remember, but I still didn't stay. I know my son, he was about 5 years old. I wanted to join Cub Scouts, and we went to the little Cub Scout meetings, and we were at the basement of a Catholic church. And there was a big crucifix hanging up, and the kids were talking, and my son's like, who's that? And I said, my kids should have some basic religious education. So I don't know if I came back because of Bryce, and I'm like, I need to start. And I forced my kids to come for a little while. And they stopped coming when they were teenagers. So it was those things combined. I'm trying to think why I chose here. I did go on the internet today to see if belief.net was still available. It's a different name, and it was a quiz, but it's been over 20 years. I took the quiz. I'm not a Unitarian Universalist anymore. I'm a secular humanist, which I thought I was before I was Unitarian. So I guess that's my run. I'm not sure why, but I'm here. I'm still new, though.
well, part of what's fun and exciting about Unitarian Universalism is that we get to incorporate elements of different religious traditions. And the next part of our service is a part that we inherit from the Quakers, who felt that that a church service did not need a single leader to steer the ship, that the truest part of a church service would come from members of the congregation sharing what they have inside, what they bring with them, and that the things that we share The good news that we share is magnified by sharing it, and the pain that we share is diminished by sharing it. This is the time in the service when we are going to honor joys and sorrows about the coming week, about the week to come. I encourage you to think for a moment about if there's something that you would like to share, and if you do, please come up and light a candle.
So last week I gave you the update on my spill. It's getting better there. I won't show you this one, although I think Erica got And so if indeed sharing is going to diminish the aches and pains, that's why I'm sharing, because I also have a bit of internal contusions. I love that word. Don't you love that word? What the heck does it mean? Good morning. My name's Meg. Today, October 13th, is my mother's, she's alive, thank goodness, is her 78th birthday, so I just wanted to give a shout out. Peggy has had a rough year, you know. I've talked over the months about how she needed to give her beloved dogs away, and my brother-in-law passing, so that, and I just was, yesterday was such a beautiful, gorgeous day, wasn't it? It was just like perfect humidity. Everything just seemed right with the world at that time, if I was in the right mindset. So how do we continue that joy today? Continue to do what we need to do to stay grateful. So that's the question I have on my mind. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I have a lot of joys. First of all, the thanks that my brother is actually okay. He survived the hurricane, no power. He has a little problem because his car was parked in a car park area, just had a coverage, and that coverage came on his car, which he thought, I think that was worse for him than if it's something had happened to the house. But anyway, he fell asleep through the whole thing. But he's fine. Secondly, I wanted to thank everybody. This is just wonderful that the church allowed me to have the docent training here, and also to have the wonderful speaker that we had on Indigenous rights. She was fantastic, and gave us really good talk here. And so I'm grateful for the help that the church had. Thank you for that board members and everybody else in the congregation. It was a great way to end my teaching career. I am no longer going to teach at all because I don't hear very well, but it was a joy for me. A concern I have is I found out last week that a person that I think a great deal of, Susan Geisler, suffered a heart attack or something similar, maybe a TIA. Our thoughts go out to Peter and her for a complete recovery. She's an amazing talent. If you've seen any of the monuments that she has created around here, she's an extremely talented person. So we hope for the best for her. Anyone else?
Well, I'm thankful because I finished my training and it was lovely having Marge as a teacher. But this weekend is like, I thought it was beautiful yesterday, and I kind of feel this pressure like, oh, what am I going to do when I wake up on Sunday morning after church? We have to go apple picking. Are we going to go to the pumpkin farm? And then I wake up and it's beautiful gray out, and I'm like, oh, we can just stay home and rest all day. So I'm thankful for the gray. And my son loves vacuums so very much. So he's just going to stay home and play with his vacuums all day.
I did want to say two joys that we saw. Bill came to the board meeting yesterday. He looks very good. He came because we have exciting board meetings. We have snacks. But he said he just didn't feel up to, he didn't think he could come to church today. But when he did say he was coming to the board meeting, I said, only if Patty said it's okay, you have to listen to your wife. And Patty drove him. She wouldn't come to the board meeting. I tried to entice her with the snacks, but Patty wouldn't join the board meeting. And then we spoke to Joan. She's on Zoom right now, and she said she's doing okay after the hurricane, but she'd get a little bit of water damage in her house, but she's okay.
I'm going to light one more candle for those joys and sorrows that we are not ready to share out loud yet. This is the time when we share our offerings for the work of this church. Spirit of love. One of the scariest moments in the Bible is in the book of Genesis, chapter 22. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac, his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And an angel of the Lord called unto him, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, for now I know thou fearest God. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So imagine you're a ram, and your face got stuck in a thorn bush, like maybe you've been practicing your headbutt, whatever, but now you've been pricked all over your snout, and here comes this shepherd, someone who takes care of sheep and goats for a living, and you're thinking, well, it's my lucky day, but then he pulls you out of the thorns and sets you on fire. The appearance of this ram is one of the great miracles of the Bible, but from an animal perspective, it's a horror. Abraham is tested to see if he fears God enough. Isaac is terrified. He's about to get slashed and burned and consumed, eaten by this deity. But it's the livestock who have the most cause to fear, because communication between humanity and divinity requires animal blood. It's like the currency by which you pay your heavenly phone bill. Abraham is an eerie and mysterious character, a stranger. He's a stranger everywhere he goes. Those of us who remember Sunday school coloring books and church camp sing-alongs might first envision an ideal father figure, but this was the guy who first mutilated his son's genitals, banished one, and almost sacrificed the other. And Isaac, by the way, never speaks to Abraham again after this. Neither does Abraham's wife, Sarah. Once he takes Isaac up the mountain, neither of them ever speak to him again. Abraham is also a symbol of a good shepherd, but it's really hazardous to be one of his lambs, because he's entered into this covenant with God, and the word covenant literally means to cut, as in to cut an animal apart. And for the first covenant ceremony, the Lord calls him to, quote, take a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And Abraham took all of these and divided them in the middle. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace, a burning lamp, passed between these two pieces. What it's saying is, this was an old symbol for cutting a deal, making a covenant, an agreement, which was you would take one or more animals, split them each in half, separate the parts, and you and your new business partner would walk in between them together, and it symbolized this twin birth, that the two of you were being symbolically reborn by passing through these, parted animals. So that is what the covenant means. Needless to say, God's promise of, progeny for animal does not include the livestock, except to the extent that if these livestock are not fruitfully multiplying, they are going to be sacrificed right into extinction. A couple of centuries later, there is a famine in the land, and Abraham's descendants must go to Egypt where the Egyptians have been storing extra grain, preparing for a famine. And the descendants of Abraham have to sell the Egyptians all of their livestock to get bread so that they won't starve to death. And when that runs out, they sell whatever land they own. And finally, they sell themselves into bondage. That's the meaning of lock, stock, and barrel. The land, the livestock, and whatever alcohol you've got. So it's the herds and the flocks who enter Egyptian captivity before the people, before the Israelites. And for generations, they live under the yoke of Egypt. And I can imagine how excited they were when they hear about this liberation movement. Like if you can picture a goat walking up to Moses and saying, "Hey man, I just want you to know, we're with you. Solidarity, we stand strong together. We've been fleeced by Egypt for too long. We're not going to stand around being sheep anymore, except for the sheep. And we've been thinking God should soften the heart of Pharaoh, make him see the light." And I mean, you can chew the cud on that one, but we're in. One little thing, some of the cows have been saying it, and I promise I'd at least bring it up. Instead of let my people go, what about let my creatures go? Like really let Pharaoh know we're all in this together. Wait, what do you mean God's going to harden the heart of Pharaoh? And plagues? What plagues? A plague on the livestock? Hold on there, cowboy. Egypt is being punished with a pestilence on the cattle? Like the donkeys are going to get sick and die? We didn't oppress anybody. We're captives of Egypt too. Well, the plague does descend and wipes out all of the Egyptian livestock. The Bible quickly reassures us that any livestock belonging to the Israelites will be spared until the 10th plague, the plague of the death of the firstborn sons of Egypt. And that's terrible. But on top of that, the Israelites are commanded to slaughter their sheep and goats. And the Lord specifies it has to be the handsomest ones, like the real prized young bucks of the herd. And the Israelites then paint their door frames with this animal blood. And then this becomes a yearly thing. The Pesach, or Passover, which has been celebrated for 3,000 years, always with zillions of lambs led to the slaughter. This tradition of sacrificing a lamb as a substitute for the firstborn son ties back to the Abraham story, and it comes up again in the Torah. Later in the Torah, we find that everybody had to do this at the Jerusalem temple when their first son was born. Even Mary and Joseph, when Jesus was born, were supposed to sacrifice a lamb, but they were too poor, so they slaughtered 2 turtle doves instead. But this was the going thing. When your kid is born, you have to go kill some animal. Jesus is called the Lamb of God who gets sacrificed to relieve the sins of the world, which must be pretty offensive to the sheep, who gets slaughtered all over the Bible. The Last Supper, remember, was a Passover Seder, which means lamb was being served there. Jesus was eating mutton with the disciples when he said that thing about spilling his blood. They say behind every great man there is a crime. And it seems behind every great biblical miracle, there is some animal getting killed. Like the horses pulling Pharaoh's chariots when the parted Red Sea crashed back together again. And when the Hebrews finally enter the promised land, it's kind of surreal. Like in the famous story of the walls of Jericho, as we read in the book of Joshua, "And it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up and took the city." But the next verse is this: "And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, man and woman, young and old, and ox, sheep, and donkey." with the edge of the sword. It is totally unclear how these animals shared the guilt of the sins of Jericho. Maybe they had been involved in some pagan rituals. The Torah contains 613 commandments, and 3 of them are identical. Thou shalt not boil a baby goat in the milk of its mother. 3 times in the Torah. So it does seem that goats were involved in some kind of weird religious stuff. But they are the victims in this circumstance, clearly not the perpetrators. Once the Jerusalem temple was built, it was a non-stop slaughterhouse, where messages to God needed to be sealed in animal blood. This ended with the destruction of the second Jerusalem temple in the year 70. If the temple is ever rebuilt, it will have to resume. But still to this day, a proper copy of the Torah must be printed on an 86-foot long scroll of lamb leather, requiring 60 skins. Certain animals, regardless of whether it was God or Mother Nature who came up with this strange idea, but listen to this. Certain animals can imprint on a mother figure or father figure from another species. So the livestock in the Exodus story either didn't know that they weren't people, or didn't know that the people weren't lambs. Whichever way it goes, the sheep follow the shepherd because they think he's a sheep. A really cool, tall sheep who can walk on 2 legs and only grows wool out of his head. And they think that because he's a sheep like them, that he's got the best interests of sheep in mind. Perhaps we've heard the expression, a wolf in sheep's clothing, but you don't need a wool sweater to make this work. And a shepherd will generally look out for the sheep. That is his stock portfolio. See, that's the pun of the sermon. His stock portfolio. His living lambskin wallet, his worldly wealth on the hoof. And they're more valuable for their renewable resources than for their lamb chops, which is a one-time thing. Let's remember here, a lamb or goat can transform grass and shrubbery into milk and wool for years before it's time to think about the knife. And then it's not just lamb chops. The shepherd can turn the bones into a sacrifice for some hungry god. Can turn the guts into haggis, the wool into a kilt, and the skin into a bagpipe. And I don't know, but maybe that's why bagpipes sound the way they do, is that it is a balloon that is made out of a lamb. Most carnivores go stalking their prey. We are pretty unique in that we can train our food to follow us around. Like, they follow us. Not just follow, they're completely lost without us, because we have bred livestock animals for stupidity. Sheep aren't naturally dumb. You've got to be really smart to be a lamb in a jungle. Just like cows are not naturally easygoing, a stampede is like a flash flood of mad flesh mixed with an earthquake topped with a sandstorm. It is one of the most dangerous things in nature. Not to mention the bull, one of the most effective killing machines in the wild. But through thousands of years of selective breeding, by which I mean unnatural selection, we have made these creatures dependent on us. And we have become dependent on them. Desmond Morris The zoologist theorizes that herding may have begun with crop-thieving pigs and cows who then found themselves captured by farmers and gradually trained. I'm not sure when I would locate animal herding in relation to farming, since it happened independently in multiple places. It could go in either order. Either way, the move from gathering to gardening and the move from hunting to herding, the concept of husbandry in general, does seem to arise from an idea that popped into the collective unconscious about 10,000 years ago, that humanity should take over what thrives and what dies off in nature. And once you've got this paradigm in place, you may as well turn a forest into a cornfield and a calf into a walking factory. Plus, the dog, who had long served as humanity's nighttime blanket and burglar alarm, but finally got a day job keeping the flocks together. As animal species go, humans are pretty much omnivorous. We can eat all manner of bugs, worms, snakes, fish, and animals, even the cockroaches of the sea, shellfish, who are usually hazardous to land animals, but we can heat them with fire until they're pretty safe to eat. There are certain things that we should not eat, like cat brains, but the kind of person who would eat a tiger's brain sort of deserves to be eliminated in the next round of natural selection. Human brains, too. Apparently, lions find human brains to be like a magically sweet ambrosia salad. It is, after all, a soupy supercomputer fueled by sugar. But I do not encourage you to find out, since eating human brains will actually turn you into a zombie. That's not just horror, that is a scientific fact. Anyway, we can eat all kinds of creatures, but we mostly limit our meat diet to a few herd animals. The takeout menu will usually offer beef, pork, or chicken, nothing exotic like iguana or panda, although sometimes it turns out to be the kind of chicken that said meow, or the kind of beef that scurries around urban trash cans at night, or, which is more likely, the one who recently ate the other. It's a circle of life, you know. When Europeans came to South America, it was not their guns or ideas or religions that overcame indigenous resistance. It was the sicknesses that they had got from living with herd animals. So we can congratulate the domestication of the goat and pig for one of the greatest atrocities in human history. But that is how the Europeans managed to take over the New World. You know, there's this famous biblical image of Jesus telling a story in which somebody separates, on Judgment Day, somebody separates the sheep from the goats, and he says to the sheep, "You've taken good care of people," and says to the goats, "You have not taken good care of people." So the sheep are going to be blessed, and the goats are going to be condemned for all time. And really, what in the world? Because goats are just as productive as sheep. And the whole idea of, deciding that to make like the devil look like a goat, which the Bible never says, but this has been no good for goats either. Well, this story in which the sheep and goats, get judged in this way by some, humanoid judge. I mean, clearly this is one of those anthropocentric moments in the Bible when we are reminded that in that book it's only the humans who really matter. But I invite you to see that scene in your mind again for a moment. Like, I don't know, what if God had no shape, or had the shape of a cow, or a sheep, or anything else? And there's a whole other scenario in which, when the time of judgment comes, God gathers the sheep and the goats and the cattle and the herd animals and says, thank you for feeding and clothing and wet nursing these poor, helpless humans for the last 10,000 years. And also, thank you for putting up with their wacky ideas about animal sacrifice. All right. Thank you. Our closing hymn is number 131.
Love will guide us, peace has trod us, hope inside us. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like the angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard nights.
Do we have any announcements today?
Hi, I wanted to mention that for coffee hour, we do have food downstairs in the pantry, that if anybody, when they're hosting coffee hour, if they would like to use the food in our pantry or to supplement it. And then starting in November, Linda was gonna be starting a series on the Amish after service. We're gonna do it on November 17th. I'll send out information in the announcements and the power line with more detail. And then I know the YWCA is honoring my mom, Shelley, and Nadja. Marge can tell you more, if she can tell you downstairs, or if you'd like to say something now. Downstairs, if you want more information.
Yes, I would like to announce that my 4 children are with me today. They're all in the basement, so we may have to correct her announcement about food in the pantry. we might get downstairs and find the cupboards are bare, and that, you know, whatever. We'll see. I have some faith. All right. Together we have sanctified this space. If you have found strength and comfort here, share some out there. They need it. This is a scary time. Remember that you are blessed and you are a blessing and you are not alone. Please join me for the words of extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
So I was stumped this week. I couldn't think of anything as postlude for many reasons. So why don't we just turn to 203 in our hymns? And we can all sing. We all know this one. Well, we can only do, let's just do the first verse.